Howdy folks, today on Cage Projects we're going to take this SD-45 and get rid of them lobster claws and add some kadee couplers. To get started, I flipped the locomotive over in this handy foam cradle. We got to take out a series of screws to remove the couplers and the plates to hold down the wire, and then there's an additional 8 screws you got to take off of the frame to remove the frame from the body. That way we can get into it and unhook the electrocoupler wires, but we'll get to that here in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and take those screws out and we'll go from there. Okay, so I know I skipped some steps here, but there is no easy way to get this body off from the frame with the camera right there. So just very gently take the frame off of the body. You have these wires you can have to deal with, but the body just sits off to the side nicely. And now I'm going to take you in a little closer and I'm going to show you which plugs you need to unplug for the couplers. So I turned the locomotive around just to where we have a little bit better view of everything, but just to kind of go through the basic internals of one of these things, you have your 2 flywheel motors, got your legacy board and soundboard, your smoke unit, but what we're looking for is right there. There's 2 of those little rubber grommets, one on the front and one on the rear, but with the 2 black wires coming out, those are the wires to the electrocoupler. You got to trace those back through. We'll end up having to cut those zip ties. And it traces back through to these 2 plugs right there. They're the only 2 2-prong plugs with only black wires going into them. Those are electrocouplers. We'll actually have to unpin the plugs because the plugs themselves will not fit through those rubber grommets. And I don't like just cutting the wires. If you want to, you can just cut the wires, but I'll unpin the plugs, put them all off in a separate container to where if I ever resell this locomotive and the next owner wants the electrocouplers back, no cut wires, all I gotta do is put it back together. So here we go. So I kind of didn't do that as cleanly as I wanted to. I might have nicked a wire trying to get that plug undone. But the way you unpin these is, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's 2 prongs right there on one side of this plug. You'll just take a pair of pliers or something and kind of pick those prongs out just a hair. You might need a pick or something of that sort, so a sharp pair of tweezers works sometimes. Pick it out, not too much, or you'll damage the plug itself, and then the wire just comes on out. Do that to the other wire, and the front coupler will be ready to be, or the front coupler wires will be ready to pull out. So looking at the rear electrocoupler wiring, the factory didn't do the best job routing these wires, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and do this off camera because it might not be the prettiest, but it's pretty much the same process as the front. Cut zip ties and replace as you go so your wires don't become a mess, and get it unplugged, unpin it, and be ready to pull through the grommet whenever we flop it back over. Like I was talking about before, and probably what you just saw in that video, there is no easy way to do that. There's so many wires in these locomotives that you just have to be extremely, extremely careful not to pinch the body and the frame, or pinch a wire in between the body and the frame. One thing to remember is most of the time, these shells will fit on the frame without having to pry or push or whatever. So if you're having to pry or push, I would be willing to bet that there's a wire somewhere that you're not seeing that's pinched. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer and move that truck out of the way. What we got to do now is remove these 4 screws off of these 2 plates that hold the wires down, and then remove that screw to actually take the coupler off. So I'm going to start with the coupler screw. And you got to be careful, because on my first locomotive of this I did, this screw broke coming out. So I don't know what the deal was there, but put that off to save for a later date. Take the coupler off. Watch out for that spring and that its own bracket. Put them off to the side. Go back down and undo these screws. So Lionel is kind enough to provide these kadee mounts, but from factory, they gave me the wrong screws. So I emailed customer support, and they gave me some part numbers for the correct screws. I ordered them. They were still wrong. So I ended up taking them, file them down, chase the threads, and now they'll work. They were just too long from factory. But now, the way you put this together is you take the kadee mount, and you actually take the kadee coupler, and put it like that. You got 2 pins that go in there. Take 1 screw, put it in right there. But today I'm using the 805 coupler, and ideally I would have used a 740, but I didn't have a 740 today. So this is what I got, so this is what I'm going to get to use. And you just kind of wiggle it in there in the opening. Take the 2 filed down screws that I was talking about, and we'll put them in these holes right there. So, got it flipped over, put on the track now, checking it against the kadee height gauge. Perfect. But there's one thing that I don't like about how the kadee box sticks out so far past the pilot. And on like the Rio Grande models, the plow hides it, but this one doesn't have a plow. So with just some styrene and some black paint, I made this little shim adapter thing, kind of make it look like a picture I found off of Google. Put that right there and make it look a little bit more finished product. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and y'all have a blessed day.